Love can truly blind you, but sometimes it borders on madness. In some cases, it blinds you so much that you can no longer see the cruelty of loved ones. This can end terribly. Maya Chappell was born in March 2020. The girl's mother was named Dana Carr and her father was James Chappell. Dana herself came from a troubled family. Both parents had alcohol problems. Her father was violent, frequently beat both his wife and daughter. All of this left a deep scar on Dana's soul. She ran away from home as soon as she could support herself. This probably happened just in time. Shortly before Maya's birth, Dana's father was convicted of murder. The man ended up in prison while his 17-year-old daughter began a relationship with James Chappell, who was already 21. Many considered Dana too immature for a serious relationship, marriage, and even more so for motherhood. But she desperately longed for love. Her boyfriend also offered her the opportunity to escape her dangerous family. They married and prepared for the birth of their child. After her father began serving his prison sentence, her mother filed for divorce and met a new man. He proved to be a more decent person quickly, found common ground with Dana, and treated her little Maya very lovingly. Unfortunately, the relationship with James did not allow the young mother to get what she wanted. The marriage fell apart before her eyes. Shortly after Maya's birth, Dana and James separated. This was in early summer 2022. The young mother had no plans to return to her parents' home, but there was no need as Dana began relationship with Michael Daymond almost immediately. Their relationship developed very quickly. By the end of August 2022, the young people moved in together. Despite James's efforts to get rid of the girl, Maya remained with her mother. Her new boyfriend was unemployed and Dana worked almost non-stop to support the entire family. Money was tight, so they saved on everything, including childcare and daycare. When Dana went to work, she left her daughter with her boyfriend. The girl's father rarely saw his daughter due to his ex-wife's ban. All of this happened in the small town of Chawton Colliery in Great Britain. It seemed as if everything was going on as usual and nothing portended trouble until one day, September 28, 2022. Around 10:00 a.m., Michael's stepfather, Carl Gallagher, came to their home. At that point, the couple had already been living together for a month. According to Dana, everything was fine. When the man showed up, Maya acted very anxiously, as if afraid of Michael. When asked about his suspicious behavior, the young man replied that he had argued on the phone with several banks that were supposed to grant him a loan but had refused. Business was slow and he was trying to resolve his financial problems. But the young man was able to convince his stepfather that everything was fine and there was no cause for concern. After the man's departure, Michael attempted to obtain payment of Social Security benefits and also approached several other banks and organizations for a loan. However, he was also rejected there due to a lack of work and income. That afternoon, the man approached Dana and explained that her daughter had lost consciousness. The girl was also having trouble breathing, so he asked his girlfriend to come home. She agreed and immediately reported home. Immediately after this call, Michael called the British ambulance service on 999. When paramedics and police arrived at the house, they found Maya in critical condition. The girl was taken to the Royal Victoria Infirmary in Newcastle. She was unconscious, and for the next 2 days, doctors desperately fought for her life. Sadly, Maya died in the hospital without regaining consciousness. She was subsequently an autopsy was performed, which revealed the girl had multiple brain injuries. 5 witnesses immediately stated that these injuries could have been caused by violence against the child. The doctors who treated the girl were shocked by the extent of the abuse. Maya had extensive injuries all over her body, but it was impossible to determine exactly what had happened to her. Large bruises and marks in various stages of healing were even found in intimate areas. Although no signs of rape could be found, the bruises indicated that most of the injuries had occurred On September 28, the very day everything had gone wrong for Michael from the very beginning, Dana and Michael were interrogated separately. Both denied that the girl had been abused. However, both had numerous excuses. They claimed that the child was very lively, ran around a lot, and fell often, which was why she had caused the bruises herself. The doctors, however, refuted these statements. Doctors believed that under no circumstances could the child have gotten into such a state on her own. Investigators began investigating the little girl's death. Michael and Dana's families noticed that Maya had bruises on her body just a few days after the couple had moved in together. These were first discovered on August 26. At that time, neighbors were out walking with their children and met Dana's daughter. Everyone saw the injuries on her head, which the girl tried to conceal with her daughter's hair. The next day they met with relatives. Michael's family also joined the group. They all noticed that Maya was injured. This time the young parents said the child had fallen from a slide. Dana readily confirmed her friend's story. At this point they managed to calm everyone down. Although they were hardly believed at the meeting, as the bruises were visible not only on Maya's head but also on her left ear. It is difficult to imagine under what circumstances such an injury could occur accidentally on the body. There were also pinpoint marks around the jaw, like bruises left by fingers. On September 5, Michael called his girlfriend at work and told her that Maya was having trouble breathing. When Dana was able to take time off work and returned home, everything was fine, but new marks had appeared on the child's body. The boyfriend immediately attributed these to accidental falls in the yard where they had been walking while her mother was at work. Dana herself took the girl for a walk the next day. Several acquaintances immediately noticed a noticeable cut on her nose. A few days later, the girl had a split lip. The excuses were roughly the same every time. She was running, fell, bumped herself. Then the child was taken to Dana's mother for a short time so that her grandmother could spend some time with her. She had a good relationship with her stepfather. That same evening, while the child was being bathed, the husband noticed bruises all over the child's body. He even took a photo and sent it to Dana, after which he advised her to take the girl to the hospital. She followed this advice. When the doctor asked what was wrong, Dana told the usual stories, that the child was clumsy and very lively, constantly bumping into objects in the room and on the street. The doctor believed her. No one contacted law enforcement. On September 14, Maya visited the kindergarten for the first time, which was not far from the couple's apartment. Such visits served as an acclimatization to the kindergarten. The child liked it very much, but it was the only time she visited, as questions immediately arose from the staff about the origin of the injuries. The young mother stopped taking the girl there. Even the teachers approached her and tried to persuade her to place Maya in this group, but Dana refused, stating that she didn't want the child or was sick. Eventually, she was quickly dropped. On September 15, the daughter was supposed to be handed over to her biological father, James, but Dana refused, claiming that the girl was unwell due to an illness. Instead, she left her with her mother and stepfather. The man decided to take the child to his relative, who was an experienced nurse. That day, Maya was noticed to have a large, strange bruise on her buttocks. It wasn't visible under the diaper, but when the diaper was removed, it was clearly visible. The bruise worried the stepfather and the nurse. They turned to Dana for an explanation. Dana referred them to Michael, who assured them that the child had bitten herself. This all sounded absurd, so they decided to take some photos to document this strange injury. While the stepfather spoke to Dana on the phone, Michael repeated several times in the background that he wasn't to blame, even though no one had accused him of anything. The couple's behavior seemed even more suspicious. The following weekend, Maya visited her relatives again. New injuries were discovered, including 4 bruises on her chest. What was most impressive was the young mother's composure as she continued to stubbornly attribute everything to coincidence. On September 27, Michael called Dana at work and said that Maya had another bruise which she had sustained while playing outside. Despite all these disturbing incidents, Dana remained calm and continued to go to work, leaving her child alone with Michael every day. As it turned out, she had repeatedly lied to the child's father, her stepfather and mother, the kindergarten teachers, and her employer about Maya's condition and health. All of this was done to conceal the true culprit for the bruises, which investigators said was Michael. Dana was the first to be interrogated and continued to lie to justify her lies. She even fabricated a story that she was pregnant at the time of Maya's abuse and then suffered a miscarriage due to the stress when the girl died. This allowed her to attribute everything to emotional shock. They were unable to obtain any valuable information from Dana, but the concerned family members were far more talkative. During the investigation into the alleged murder, Dana broke up with her boyfriend but immediately began a new relationship. Just a few weeks later, she became pregnant again and was now expecting a son. However, the young mother was considered a suspect in the girl's murder. After the birth of her son, he was taken into social services. Michael behaved equally immaturely. First, he accused Dana's mother of hitting her, then her stepfather, and finally the child's biological father. However, the investigators were convinced that the systematic abuse of the girl was connected to him, as the child's bruises always appeared when she was alone with Michael. All that remained was to find a motive, and that didn't take long to arrive. It was suspected that the young man was simply taking out his anger on the girl. This anger, in turn, was related to Michael's debts and the threats he received because he couldn't pay them. September 28th was a very unfortunate day for Dana's boyfriend. First, dealers came to him and claimed he owed them a large sum of money. These problems had been going on for a long time. For several months, they had been trying quite aggressively to collect the debt. The young man was being followed but not yet attacked. He was once again able to convince the dealers that they would receive the money shortly. In fact, he didn't have the required amount, so he looked for a way to get it. Michael called the social services, which provide social assistance, but without success. Then he turned to banks, also without success. He then spent 16 minutes on the phone trying to get money, but that didn't work either. This bad news completely upset the man, and he likely took his anger out on the little girl. What had happened was a severe blow to the child's biological father. According to James, he had tried to protect the little girl for 2 years. It was clear to the young man that Dana was a bad mother and incapable of providing for Maya. When she filed for divorce, Dana claimed the relationship was toxic and that James was aggressive and violent. But all of this was just as much a lie as the other stories the woman had fabricated. In reality, the husband simply saw Dana's emotional immaturity and inexperience and was trying to get her to finally grow up and take responsibility for herself, her family, and her child. James was also convinced that Dana would take revenge and feared that this anger might also affect Maya. Although the allegations of her ex-husband's aggressive behavior could not be proven, Dana was granted custody and James was only allowed to see his daughter on weekends. Although his ex-wife initially tried to completely cut off contact between the father and the girl, despite his right to see his daughter, Dana prevented him at every opportunity and sometimes under various pretexts prevented the child from being taken to her father. James rarely had contact with his daughter. When he saw the first bruises, the young father questioned Dana. She gave the usual excuses for accidental injuries and then practically stopped bringing the girl to see her to avoid having to listen to her ex-husband's accusations. James was certain that if she wasn't involved in the systematic beatings of Maya, she was at least covering for her boyfriend, who was responsible. James suspected something was wrong with the man from the start, but Dana described the relationship between her daughter and her boyfriend as almost ideal. She said that Michael treated the girl like his own daughter, as if they spent all their free time together, going for walks, watching movies, playing games. However, the truth was far from this lie. Most likely, Dana used this deception to anger the girl's biological father. She simply wanted to hurt him. When James noticed the first bruises on his daughter's body, he first checked Michael's records in police databases. He suspected that the boy had several criminal records. To his surprise, however, he discovered that Michael had no criminal record. Despite Dana's assurances that these were coincidences, her ex-husband noticed how the child's behavior changed during the rare and brief visits. The father noticed that Maya's behavior deteriorated drastically. The girl became disobedient, very nervous, cried constantly, and slept poorly. The father directly linked all this to the negative influence of her mother and her new boyfriend, but could not prove anything. In fact, during this time, Michael was under constant pressure from creditors demanding money. This was probably reflected in Maya. He had accumulated very large debts for illegal substances. The dealers who had sold him the illegal substances were demanding their money. They were becoming increasingly threatening. Once, when James came to pick up his daughter from the house where she lived with Dana and Michael, he saw broken windows. Both blamed the damage on some thugs, but it later turned out that it was the dealers trying to intimidate the debtor. On his next visit, the house was smeared with paint. Furthermore, his ex-wife said that someone had pulled the fuses from the fuse box the day before James arrived, leaving them without power for almost a day until they figured out what had happened. Dana tried to convince her ex-husband that they were some kind of thugs or stalkers. It's hard to say whether she was simply lying or whether the young mother genuinely didn't know what was going on in the house. When the biological father suspected his daughter's abuse, he wanted to gather and document evidence to file a full complaint. Unfortunately, at that time, the girl's biological mother allowed virtually no contact with her daughter. She canceled the weekend handover several times under various pretexts. Sometimes she claimed the child was sick, sometimes that the daughter didn't want to go to her father. Therefore, James could do nothing to protect the girl. Now it became clear that all this had been done intentionally to allow the child's bruises to heal and to avoid any awkward questions. As soon as the child finally visited her biological father, Dana again looked for excuses for new injuries and said that Maya had spent several days with her grandparents. Now they were to blame for not looking after the child. Much to James's dismay, Maya's age made it very difficult for her to express herself. Her father tried to talk to her about the matter, but every time he pointed to the bruises, the girl made gestures as if something were hitting her and said, "Die." Only later did James understand that she was referring to Michael, derived from the surname Daymond. Of course, this wasn't enough to accuse him of abusing the little girl until it was too late. During the investigation, after reviewing the suspects' correspondence and phone numbers, a wealth of information was obtained. It seemed as if Dana didn't realize what was really going on and readily believed every lie Michael told her. Most often, he said Maya had fallen on the playground while they were out for a walk, or that she had run into something at full speed in the house. Before meeting this young man, nothing like this had ever happened in the child's life. But even these drastic changes didn't arouse suspicion in the biological mother. She continued to firmly believe what she was being told. The situation worsened due to impunity. When James began actively investigating the child's condition, Dana became suspicious and seriously spoke to her partner, as Maya did indeed have several strange bruises that resembled bites. Michael then came up with the strangest excuse. He claimed the girl was biting herself. This led investigators to wonder, Why, despite all the strange injuries and her boyfriend's suspicious behavior, didn't Dana contact a medical center, the police, or other professionals? The young mother cited her inexperience. When all the family members began asking uncomfortable questions about the girl's injuries, Michael simply said that he would no longer be with Maya if she didn't stop asking all these questions and interfering in his affairs. Contrary to expectations, Dana did not react clearly to this statement. She tried to convince her boyfriend that she believed him and began to justify her behavior and the need to save money. The dialogue ended with Dana confessing her love to him, telling him that she trusted him and wanted him to continue looking after their daughter. Instead of checking Michael's suspicions, she continued to justify him. Even when she was shown photos of her beaten daughter, she assured everyone that Maya would have been even more seriously injured without her boyfriend's supervision. James was shocked by his ex-wife's naivety, but unfortunately there was nothing he could do about it. Several times, the messages between the lovers ended with Michael assuring Dana that he would never touch her daughter under any circumstances, and she assured him that she would never think so badly of him. Even when Michael was on this, after writing on the fateful day that Maya was suffocating, the young mother ended the brief conversation by saying that she loved her boyfriend and didn't want to lose him. It seemed as if she wasn't at all worried about her child's fate. When the child was found alive in the house, suspicions of domestic violence immediately arose. The hospital counted more than 50 bruises in various stages of healing on her body. Among them were very suspicious marks resembling bite marks. After the autopsy, the forensic pathologist concluded that the child had been beaten for an extended period of time with a blunt object, likely an adult's fists. Everything pointed to Michael. Most of the injuries were in the girl's head and abdomen. It was suspected that she had been violently thrown to the ground. According to the surgeon who tried to save Maya, she looked as if she had fallen from a great height or been involved in a high-speed car accident. Only when she heard these terrible suspicions did Dana finally begin to suspect something, as is evident from her confession. However, investigators assumed that the mother was once again feigning because the child's condition was not the result of spontaneous actions, but of systematic abuse by her partner. This was no secret to her. Everyone around her talked about it and asked the young mother to think about it. When police and paramedics arrived at the couple's home to take Maya to the hospital, 27-year-old Michael was arrested. He was suspected of domestic violence. The man was interrogated but admitted nothing. When the girl died in the hospital, the young man was charged with murder. He was interrogated again, now as the prime suspect, but continued to deny his guilt. On the contrary, he described his relationship with the girl as loving and mutually understanding. According to the young man, he never shouted at her or raised her voice. But on the day she suddenly stopped breathing, he sensed the child was ill. Before the 2-year-old lost consciousness, they had been playing Xbox together, then she had gone to her bedroom. Michael continued playing for about 10 minutes until he heard a loud thud coming from the child's room. He got up to see what had happened. As he got up, the noise repeated itself. He found Maya lying motionless on the floor. It looked as if the girl had fallen out of bed twice. That didn't sound convincing. He immediately noticed the child's irregular breathing and called his friend for help, brought her home, and then called the emergency services. He spoke to Michael while the paramedics were on their way and gave him detailed first aid instructions. The young man claimed to have performed artificial respiration and chest compressions. This was all a lie. Even multiple falls from the bed to the floor could not have resulted in so many bruises. Everything pointed to the child's ongoing abuse. But Michael didn't admit this. The young man's stepfather, who had stopped by their home that same morning, subsequently spoke with investigators. He was so shocked by the girl's behavior that he initially wanted to take her with him. According to the man, she cried, called for her mother, looked frightened, and even tried to hide when she saw Michael. It was obvious that the child was uncomfortable around this man. When the stepfather told the young man about this, the man said everything was fine and assured him there was nothing to worry about. Nevertheless, the man managed to record a video showing the girl's strange behavior. It was later used in court to refute Michael's statements. Investigators discovered numerous calls related to Michael's financial affairs and were shocked by the time intervals. The call to the emergency call center was made from a landline. But while the dispatcher was explaining first aid measures to the young man, another call was made to the bank. The perpetrator simply left the girl to die in the room and briefly left to apply for another loan on his cell phone. He was indifferent to her fate. In addition to all these incidents and the young man's suspicious behavior, investigators discovered that he had cheated on his girlfriend. He had a profile on an online dating website. While living with Dana, he continued to message and meet other women. A message was even found in which one of his lovers confessed to being pregnant by him. Contact with her was immediately cut off. In addition to banned substances, Michael also took steroids. This may have had significant influence on his aggressive behavior and emotional state, especially in combination with the banned substances. He simply couldn't control himself at times. Maya suffered from this. Dana continued to insist that she had no knowledge of any of this. The young mother was also arrested and charged with abusing her daughter. It was believed that her indifference had contributed to the domestic violence. Dana had been informed of the situation but had done nothing to protect her daughter from the beatings. Instead, she supported Michael and said she would not leave him. Dana's trial began in October 2023. At that time, she stated that she had been so obsessed with her boyfriend that she had been blind. She simply hadn't noticed what was happening and hadn't believed her relatives that her partner was harming her daughter. According to her statements, the young mother was unaware of the consequences of her boyfriend's behavior. For a while, Dana didn't even understand that the police were blaming her for what had happened. When the lawyer was able to convey these simple truths to his client, she changed her behavior. It seemed as if the young mother was now showing remorse. However, hardly anyone truly believed her. Everyone thought Dana was just trying to avoid prison. During the trial, the defense attorney attempted to portray her as a victim who had long suffered violence in her family during her childhood at the hands of her brutal father. In the end, she killed someone. Dana had become accustomed to the brutal treatment, which had become normal. For her, the emotional trauma had distorted her mind and prevented her from understanding what this could mean for the little girl. All of the attorney's arguments could only move the jury, as they in no way justified their indifference toward the girl. In court, Dana stated that she was now uncomfortable being in the same room with Michael. However, she refuted her tearful stories with another lie. According to Dana's earlier statements, she had suffered a miscarriage after the girl's death, a story the investigators already knew. Now she went even further. While she had spoken of a simple pregnancy during interrogations, she now spoke of twins with Michael. As before, her fate ended tragically. Now Dana claimed she had terminated the pregnancy when she realized that Michael had killed her daughter. The defendant wanted nothing more to do with him and did not want to have any children with him. This argument was immediately refuted by the prosecution, as there were no medical records confirming a pregnancy, miscarriage, or abortion. This lie somewhat damaged Dana. The prosecution believed that she had lied, shown criminal indifference toward the girl, and simply ignored obvious dangers. Further evidence of the mother's indifference was the fact that, although she had separated from Michael after her daughter's death, but immediately found a new boyfriend, started a relationship with him, became pregnant, and gave birth to a son. All of this did not resemble mourning for her murdered daughter. After the trial, 24-year-old Dana was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Later, the trial of Michael Daymond began. Unlike Dana, he refused to defend himself. His defense attorney insisted that his client had no sadistic motives, no premeditation or planning for the girl's murder, making it an accident. Despite all these pathetic attempts to exonerate the defendant, Michael was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, the court showed leniency and granted the murderer the right to early release after 21 years. The child's funeral took place on November 4, 2022. Following this tragic event, James wrote a final message for his daughter on his social media page. He said goodbye to his little daughter, apologized for not being able to protect her, and promised her that they would definitely see each other again. Thank you for watching and take care of yourselves.